Chapter 28. By and by it was getting up time, so I come down the ladder and started for downstairs, but as I come to the girls' room, the door was open, and I was see Mary Jane setting by her old hair trunk, which was open, and she'd been packing things in it, getting ready to go to England. But she had stopped now, with a folded gown in her lap, and had her face in her hands, crying. I felt awful bad to see it. Of course anybody would. Well, I went in there and I says, "Miss Mary Jane, you can't bear to see people in trouble, and I can't most always. Tell me about it." So she done it, and it was the slaves, just as I expected. She said the beautiful trip to England was most about spoiled for her, and she didn't know how she was ever going to be happy, knowing that the mother and the children weren't ever going to see each other no more. And then busted out bitterer than ever, and flung her hands, and says, "Oh dear, dear, to think they ain't ever going to see each other no more." "But they will," I says, "and inside of 2 weeks. And I know it," says I. Laws, it was out of me before I could think. And before I could budge, she throws her arms around my neck and told me to say it again and again, and to say it again. I see I'd spoke too sudden, and said too much, and I was in a close pace. I asked her to let me think a minute, and she sat there, very impatient, and very excited, and very handsome, but looking kind of happy and eased up, like a person that's had a tooth pulled out. So I went to studying it out, and I says to myself, I reckon a body that up and tells the truth when he's in a tight place has taken considerable many risks, and I hadn't had no experience, and I can't say for certain, but it looks so to me, anyway. And yet, here's a case where I'm blessed if it don't look to me like the truth is better and actually safer than a lie. Well, I must lay it out by and by in my mind and think it over some time or another. It's so kind of strange and irregular. I never seen nothing like it. Well, I says to myself at last, I'm going to chance it. I'll up and tell the truth this time. Though it does seem most like setting down a keg of powder and touching it off just to see where you'll go. And then I says, "Miss Mary Jane, is there a place out of town a little ways where you could go and stay for 3 or 4 days?" "Yes, Mr. Lothrop's." "Why?" "Well, never mind why yet. If I'll tell you how I know the slaves will see each other again inside of 2 weeks, here in this house, and prove how I know it, will you go and stay with Mr. Lothrop's for 4 days?" "4 days?" she says. "I'll stay a week." Actually, that's not what she says. She says, 4 days. She says, "I'll stay a year." Eyes getting ahead of my mouth again. "All right," I says. "I don't want nothing more out of you other than just your word. I'd rather have that than another man's kiss the Bible." She smiled and reddened up very sweet, and I says, "If you don't mind it, I'll shut the door and bolt it." And then I come back and set down again and says, "Don't you holler. Just set still and take it like a man. I got to tell the truth. And you want to brace up, Miss Mary Jane, because it's a bad kind. It's going to be hard to take. But there ain't no other help for it. These uncles of yourn, they ain't no uncles at all. They're a couple of frauds, regular deadbeats. There. Now we're over the worst of it. And you can stand to take the riddling mess, and you can stand the rest middling easy." Well, that jolted her up like everything, of course. I was over the shoal water now, so I went right along, her eyes a-blazing higher and higher the whole time. I told her every blame thing. From where we first struck that young fool going up through the steamboat, clear through to where she flung herself onto the king's breast in front of the door, and he kissed her 16 or 17 times. And then up she jumps her face afire like a sunset, and says, "That brute! Come, don't waste a minute, not a second. We'll have them tarred and feathered and flung in the river." Well, I says, "Certainly. But do you mean before you go to Mr. Lothrop's, or—" "Oh," she says, "what am I thinking about?" she says, and sat right back down again. "Don't mind what I said. Please, you won't, now will you?" Laying her silky hand on mine in that kind of way, I thought I would never die but first. "I never thought I was so stirred up," she says. "Now go on, and I won't do so no more. You tell me what to do. Whatever you say, I'll do it." "Well," I says, "it's a rough gang, them two frauds. And I'm fixed so I got to travel with them a while longer, whether I want to or not. I'd rather not tell you why. And if you was to blow on them right now in this town, it would get me out of their claws, and I'd be all right. But there'd be another person that you don't know who'd be in big trouble. We got to save him, ain't we?" "Of course." "Well then, we won't blow on them frauds just yet." Saying them words put a good idea into my head. I see how maybe I could get me and Jim rid of the frauds, get them jailed here, and then leave. But I didn't want to run the raft in the daytime without anybody aboard to answer questions but me. So I didn't want the plan to begin working till pretty late tonight. And I says, "Miss Mary Jane, I'll tell you what we do. And you won't have to go stay at Mr. Lothrop's so long, nother. How fur is it?" A little short of 4 miles right out in the country, back here," she says. "Well, that'll answer. Now you go along out there and lay low till 9 or half past tonight. And then you get them to fetch you home again. Tell them you thought of something. If you get here before 11, put a candle in this here window. And if I don't turn up, wait until 11. And then if I don't turn up, it means I'm gone and got out of the way, here and safe. And then you come out and spread the news all around and get these beats jailed." "Good," she says. "I'll do it. And if it just so happens that I don't get away, but get took up along with them, you must up and say I told you the whole thing beforehand. And you must stand by me all you can." "Stand by you? Indeed I will. They shan't touch a hair of your head," she says. And I see her nostrils spread and her eyes snap. She said it too. "If I get away, I shan't be here," I says, "to prove these rapscallions ain't your uncles. And I couldn't do it if I was here. I could swear they was beats and bummers, and that's all. Well, that's worth something. Well, there's others that can do it better than I can. And they're people that ain't going to be dudded so quick as I'd be. And I'll tell you how to find them. Give me a pencil and a piece of paper. There. Royal Nonsuch, Bricksville. Put that away and don't lose it. When the court wants to find out something about these two, let them send up to Bricksville and say they've got the men that played the Royal Nonsuch, and ask for some witnesses. Well, you'll have the entire town down here before you can hardly wink, Miss Mary. And they'll come a-bailing, too." Well, I judged we had got everything fixed about right now, so I says, "Just let the auction go right along, and don't worry. Nobody don't have to pay for things that they buy till a whole day after the auction, on account of the short notice. And they ain't going to be out of this till they get that money. And the way they've fixed it, the sale ain't going to count. And they ain't going to take no money. It's just the way it was with the slaves. There weren't no sale. The slaves will be back before long. Why, they can't collect the money for the slaves yet. They're in the worst kind of fix, Miss Mary." "Well," she says, "I'll run down to breakfast now, and then I'll start straight for Mr. Lothrop's." "'Deed, that ain't the ticket, Miss Mary Jane," I says. by no means of manner or means go before breakfast. Why? Well, what do you reckon I wanted you to go at all for, Miss Mary? Well, I never thought of it. And now that I do, I don't know. Why was it? Why, it's because you ain't one of these leather-faced people. I don't want no better book than what your face is. Body can sit down and read it like a course print. Do you reckon you can go and face your uncles when they come to kiss you good morning and never... There, don't. Yes, I'll go before breakfast. I'll be glad to. Leave my sisters with them? Yes, never mind about them. They've got to stand it a while yet. They might suspicion something if all of you was to go. I don't want you to see them, nor your sisters, nor nobody in this town. If a neighbor was to ask you how your uncle's is this morning, your face would tell something. No, you go right along now, Miss Mary Jane, and I'll fix it with all of them. I'll tell Miss Susan to give your love to your uncles and say that you've went away for a few hours to get a little rest and change, or to see a friend, and you'll be back tonight or early in the morning. Gone to see a friend is all right, but I won't have my love given to them. Well, then, it shan't be. It was well enough to tell her so, no harm in that. It was only a little thing to do, and no trouble, and it's the little things that smooths people's roads the most. Here, down here below, it would make Mary more comfortable, and it wouldn't cost nothing. And then I says, there's one more thing. That bag of money. Well, they've got that, and it makes me pretty silly to feel how they got it. No, you're out there. They ain't got it. Why, who's got it? I wish I knowed, but I don't. I had it, 'cause I stole it from them. I stole it to give it to you. I know where I hid it, but I'm afraid it may not be there no more. I'm awful sorry, Miss Mary Jane. I'm just as sorry as I can be. But I done the best I could. I did. Honest. I come nigh getting caught. And I had to shove it in the first place I come to and run. And it weren't a good place. Oh, stop blaming yourself. It's too bad to do it. I won't allow it. You couldn't help it. It wasn't your fault. Where did you hide it? Well, I didn't want to set her to thinking about her troubles again. And I couldn't seem to get my mouth to tell her what would make her see what the hell. I didn't want to set her to thinking about her troubles again. And I couldn't seem to get my mouth to tell her what would make her see that corpse laying in the coffin with that bag of money on his stomach. So for a minute I didn't say nothing. And then I says, I'd rather not tell you where I put it, Miss Mary Jane, if you don't mind me letting you off. But I'll write it for you on a piece of paper, and then you can read it along the road to Mr. Lothrop's, if you want to. Do you reckon that'll do? Oh, yes. So I wrote. I put it in the coffin. It was in there the night you was a-crying, away in the night. I was behind the door. I was mighty sorry for you, Miss Mary Jane. It made my eyes water a little to remember her crying there, all by herself in the night, and them devils laying there right under her own roof, shaming her and robbing her. When I folded it up to give it to her, I see the water come into her eyes, too. And she shook me by the hand hard, and she says, Goodbye. I'm going to do everything just as you've told me. If I don't ever see you again, I shan't ever forget you. And I'll think of you many a time. And I'll pray for you, too. And then she was gone. Pray for me? I reckon if she'd knowed me, she'd have taken a job that was nearer. Bleh. It's not a good day for the mouth. Pray for me? I reckon if she knowed me, she'd take a job that was more near her size. But I bet she'd done it, just the same. She was just that kind. She had the grit to pray for Judas if she took the notion. There weren't no back down to her, I judge. You may say what you want to, but in my opinion, she had more sand in her than any girl I ever did see. In my opinion, she was just full of sand. That sounds like flattery, but it ain't. It ain't no flattery. And when it comes to beauty, and goodness too, she lays over them all. I ain't ever seen her since that time that I seen her go out that door. No, I ain't ever seen her, but I reckon I thought of her many and many a million times. Of her saying she'd pray for me. If I ever thought it would do me good to pray for her, I blame I'd have done it or bust. Well, Mary Jane, she lit out the back way, I reckon, because nobody see her go. When I struck Susan in the hairlip, I says, "What's the name of them people over the other side of the river that y'all go and see sometime?" And they says, "Well, there's several, but it's the Proctors, maybe." "That's the name," says I. "I most forgot it. Well, Miss Mary Jane, she told me to tell you. She's gone over there in a dreadful hurry. One of them's sick." "Which one?" "I don't know. Leastways, I kind of forgot. I think it's, sakes alive, I hope it ain't Hanner." "I'm sorry to say it," says I, "but Hanner's the very one." "My goodness. She's so well only last week. She took it bad?" "Ain't no name for what she took. They set up with her all night, Miss Mary Jane said, and they don't think she'll last many hours." "Only think of that now. What's the matter with her?" Well, I couldn't think of anything reasonable right off to say, so I says, "Mumps." "Mumps your granny. They don't set up with people that's got the mumps." "Oh, they don't they? Well, you better bet they do with these mumps. These mumps is different. It's a new kind," Miss Mary Jane said. "How's it a new kind?" "Because it's mixed up with other things." "Well, what other things?" "Well, measles and whooping cough and erysipelas and consumption and yaller janders and brain fever and I don't know what all." "My land, they call it the mumps?" Miss Mary Jane said, "Well, what in the nation do they call it the mumps for?" "Why, because it is the mumps. That's what it starts with." "Well, there ain't no sense in it. A body might stump his toe and take pison, and fall down the well and break his neck or bust his brains out. And somebody come along and ask what killed him? Some numbskull up say, 'cause he stumped his toe? Would there be any sense in that? No. There ain't no sense in this, nuther. Is it catching?" "Is it catching? Well, how you talk? Is a harrow catching? In the dark? If you don't hitch on to one tooth, you're bound to catch on another, ain't you? And if you can't get away with that tooth without fetching the whole harrow along, can you? Well, these kind of mumps is a kind of harrow, as you might say. And ain't no slouch of a harrow either. You come get it, you hitched on good." "Well, that's awful, I think," says the harelip. "I'll go to Uncle Harvey and says." "Oh, yes," I says, "I would. Of course I would. I wouldn't lose no time." "Well, why wouldn't you?" "Well, just look at it for a minute. Maybe you can see. Ain't your uncles obliged to get along home to England as fast as they can? And do you reckon they'd be mean enough to go off and leave you all to go on that journey all by yourselves? You know, they'll wait for you. So far, so good. Your Uncle Harvey's a preacher, ain't he? Well, very well then. Is a preacher going to deceive a steamboat clerk? Is he going to deceive a ship clerk so as to get them to let Miss Mary Jane aboard? Now, you know he ain't. What will he do then?" "Well, he'll say, 'It's a great pity, but my church matters got to get along as best they can, for my niece has been exposed to the dreadful pluribus unum mumps. And so it's my bounden duty to set down here and wait for 3 months it takes to show on her to see if she's got it. But never mind, if you think it's best for you to tell your Uncle Harvey." "Well, shucks, and stay fooling around here? when we could be all having good times in England whilst we was waiting to find out if Miss Mary Jane's got it or not? Why, you talk like a muggins. Well, anyway, maybe you'd be better off telling some of the neighbors. Well, listen at that now. You do beat all for natural stupidness. Can't you see that they'd go around and tell? There ain't no way but just not telling anybody at all. Well, says I, maybe you're right. Yes, I judge you are right. But I reckon we ought to tell Uncle Harvey she's gone out a while anyways. So won't he be uneasier about her? Well, yes. Miss Mary Jane said she wanted you to do that. She says, tell them to give Uncle Harvey and William my love and a kiss. And say I've run over to see Mr. What is the name of that rich family your Uncle Peter used to think so much of? I mean, the one. Why, you must mean the Aythorpes, right? Ain't so the Aythorpes? Of course. Bother them a kind of names. Body can't seem to remember any of them. Half time somehow. Yes, that's what she said. She said she's run over to ask the Aythorpes to be sure and come to the auction and buy this house. Because she allowed her Uncle Peter would rather have that they have it than anybody else. And she's going to stick it to them till they say they'll come. And then if she ain't too tired, she's coming home. If she is, she'll come home in the morning anyway. She said, don't say nothing about the Proctors, but only about the Aythorpes, which is perfectly true, because she is going there to speak to them about buying the house. I know it, because she told me so herself. All right, they said, and they cleared out to lay their uncles and give them the love and the kisses and tell them the message. Well, everything was all right now. The girls wouldn't say nothing because they wanted to go to England. And the King and the Duke would rather Mary Jane was off working for the auction than around in reach of Dr. Robinson. I felt really good. I judged I had done it pretty neat. I reckon Tom Sawyer couldn't have done it no neater himself. Of course, he'd have thrown more style into it. But I can't do that very handy, not being brung up to it. Well, they handled the auction in the public square, and along toward the end of the afternoon, and it strung along, and the old man, he was on hand, looking at his level Pisonist, there alongside of the auctioneer, chipping in a little scripture now and then, or a little goody-goody saying of some kind, and the Duke, he was around goo-goo and all for sympathy, all he knowed how, and just spreading himself generally. But by and by, the thing dragged through, and everything was sold. Everything but a little old trifling lot in the graveyard. So they got to work that off. I never seen such a giraffe as king who wanted to swallow everything. And, well, whilst they was at it, a steamboat landed. In about 2 minutes, up comes a crowd of whooping and yelling and laughing and carrying on and singing out. Well, here's your opposition line. Here's your 2 sets of heirs to old Peter Wilkes. And you pays your money and you takes your choice.